Everyone, welcome back to the Pac South podcast. And Pat, we are officially here at the March Madness tournament. We have our first four games beginning tonight. And then obviously this weekend will be the first round. We're going to work our way into the tournament. And by doing so, very beginning, we're going to start with who are we shocked that missed the tournament? I am a little surprised, but at the same time, I can see it just due to what they did down the stretch. I love that New Mexico team in the Mountain West, but in the big games that they need it, mainly being the Utah State game, those series throughout the season, they just couldn't get that big win, and a bad loss to a Colorado State team who wasn't the best. Lands them as a one seed in the NIT. So that's kind of my only team I really was a bit upset that missed a tournament, but I'm kind of nitpicking a bit. I think the field is pretty true to what it should have been. Do you have the similar feelings?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know. I would have liked to see, kind of like you mentioned, the Mountain West be more than just a one big conference. I thought that while it was a little top heavy this year, like this is the first year since the early 2010s that the Mountain West hasn't gotten multiple teams in. So I thought it was going to be San Diego State. I thought they had a really good shot instead of New Mexico, because I think they won 2 out of 3 in the regular season
They did, yes.
/ Mountain West tournament against the Lobos. So I thought they had the best shot of the mid majors that didn't get in at being an at large. But still, I feel like this year the committee did get it right. I was a little nervous for a second there, waiting to see, if Miami, Ohio was going to get in, if they were going to get snubbed. Of course, they're in the first 4 games, which is still making the tournament. You can say as the committee, we put them in there. They have an opportunity to win this game, then get a matchup that's decently favorable, I feel like, against a Tennessee team that has been a little up and down this year. So, yeah, I feel like the committee did a pretty good job.
Yeah, I think that Miami pick was kind of like the threshold of, did the committee get it right? Did they not? Because there was so much attention on that team in particular. And that was a bad loss in that MAC tournament. However, you still have to reward a team for going undefeated in regular season play. I mean, 31 games is a lot, and obviously not the most high caliber. They didn't have the best resume, like teams like obviously Duke at the top, because Duke's losses in quad 1 were greater than Miami's attempts at quad 2 and 1. So understand that bit of the argument as well, but as I said previously, 31 games going undefeated deserves to be rewarded. I'm glad that this team is at least in the tournament. That being said, who is too high in the tournament, men's and women's? Who is kind of getting way too much?
I don't know. This one's a little tough because, I feel like in some cases you see the conference tournament kind of boost resumes a little bit. I think because Purdue went on the run that they did, won the Big Ten, that's what kind of locked them into the 2 seed range, when I don't know if they're really a true 2 seed. I think if Michigan State beats UCLA, we might have a different conversation on our hands. But kind of like I said last week with my take on Michigan State, they are easily one of the best teams in the Big Ten, but they lose games sometimes that they really shouldn't, or they're a little bit inconsistent in terms of like half court sets and things like that. So I get why Purdue's a 2, but at the same time, they were the 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So it's not like they had rolled through conference play or something like that. Obviously, the Big Ten is very strong this year, but still, I thought they were a little high. And I'm going to be honest, Texas Tech on the 5 line without their best player was a little bit surprising to me. I mean, granted, they still picked up some decent wins without JT Toppin in the lineup, but I was like, huh, okay, when I saw the Red Raiders come in on that 5 seed line.
Yeah, and that is, I feel like, one of, if not the most picked, 5 versus 12. I'm blanking on the 12 with them right now.
Akron,
that's right. Which was it 2 years ago? We had a similar Akron team that kind of made some noise in the tournament as well. And I feel like that's partly why I forgot. Yeah, Akron. I didn't go with that because I'm like, I feel like we just saw that song and dance recently. I don't think that's something we have there.
Yeah.
I'm completely echoing your Purdue point. I think that I feel like it should have been a 3. I understand with winning the Big Ten because I literally was just saying last episode, I think the Big Ten that is going to produce the national champion this year. The curse will kind of be broken. I think that is a great basketball conference. It has been, and every team coming out that's in the tournament is very battle tested. So I think that it's Purdue on the men's side of things, just by 1 seed. Mm-hmm. And women's side, virtually same story, just 1 seed. I like Iowa as a 3 over a 2. I don't know. Like, it's definitely getting into the nitpick, especially on the women's side. And I feel like that also just shows how well they didn't over value some teams this year. So not only did everyone get in the field properly, they didn't overvalue these teams, because I'm literally saying, well, Purdue as a 2 should be a 3, but they won the tournament, so I understand. Iowa 2, 3 is close. I understand. So really just nitpicking. So I mean, again, got to give a shout out to committee, because it's not very often we're able to give shout outs to committees on this podcast. So very nice there. Do you have anyone on the women's side for yours?
I don't know about overvalued. I would kind of echo Iowa. I was a little surprised that they got a 2 seed in addition to Michigan getting a 2 seed when Michigan won that Big Ten championship fairly convincingly against them. I don't know. I think that's probably my only, I'll say, like, overseed. I do have a few teams that I feel like could have been on the 2 line instead of the 3 line, replacing Iowa. Like, I feel like TCU could have been a 2 seed instead of a 3 seed. They had a really good season this year, looked really good in Big 12 play. So I was kind of surprised to see them fall to a 3. But again, like you said, I think we do have to give the committee props this year. They did a pretty good job in, let's say, like, accurately slotting teams in and kind of, like, finding the proper level for some of these matchups, and also creating interesting matchups, because you don't just want, like, 5 seeds to clear all the 12s or 6 to clear all the 11s, stuff like that.
Yeah, my women's tournament this year, actually, I don't have a lot of upsets, but my biggest Cinderella, which I guess we're going to skip ahead since I'm just going to go into it. My biggest Cinderella going to the Sweet 16 is Notre Dame at a 6 in the women's. My highest in the men's to the Sweet 16 is a 5. So I really don't like the upsets in this tournament. And if I do have any upsets, they're losing pretty quickly. So I don't really think there's going to be any fairy tale runs, no Florida Atlantics, no Loyolas. I think it's going to be a pretty cut and dry tournament this year. So, like, kind of boring, I guess, for, neutrals who are just watching for the chaos. I think that we're, at least in this year, the way the NIL era is kind of, like, adapted into these rosters. But that being said, it is March Madness, so, like, somewhere something will still give. Yeah. But I think as a whole, you're not going to have a 7 seed and a 10 seed and, maybe another 5 or a 6 really pushing for the Final Four. It's going to be are we getting to the second weekend type of deal.
For sure.
I'll move it back. We can come to your Cinderella in a second, but I'll move it back to where we were supposed to go, from too high, and that's too low. You said TCU. I think Duke on the women's side. Duke is a 3. I really like them as 2. Winning the ACC tournament, they were a very hot team in the second half of the season. And also, I think it's a little weird sharing the seeding with Louisville. Had Louisville won the ACC, I could see them sharing, but considering how dominant Duke was throughout conference play the whole year, I I don't really understand that shared seating. I think that they definitely could have been one higher, and they would deserve to have moved up to a two. On the men's side, I'll say it. I'll give them a little bit extra benefit of the doubt. I don't like Miami, Ohio being a first four team. Or last four or whatever. Our extra games, our 68. Um, I would have much rather seen them as like a 12 or a 13 seed being in the initial field of 64 rather than having to play into the field of 64. I feel that they deserve that much because it's like, yes, they're in the tournament, but you got to play to get to the official tournament. So to get to the second weekend, they're playing 3 games. I feel like that's kind of a, you know, unjust way of saying they're in the tournament, but nonetheless, they have the chance. That's my only gripe on the men's side, really, is a team that I actually want to be, I say is too low, but I actually want to seed lower just so that they're in the initial grouping.
Yeah. On the women's side, I'd say like primarily TCU. Kind of like you mentioned, I feel like Duke could have been a little bit more respected. They had that rough patch in non-conference play, but they were pretty in
Yeah.
control of the ACC and handled themselves pretty well in conference play. As you mentioned, they got that scare in the ACC tournament from Louisville, or it looked like Louisville was going to win that game until they didn't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
overall, it was like a really, really strong conference showing from Duke. So I'm surprised that didn't bump them to a 2 line, like let's say like TCU, right? And then on the men's side, in terms of let's say like underseeded, um, I feel like I don't know. I feel like Santa Clara could have been a little higher than the 10 seed that they got. Because that's a really athletic team and they play a pretty good brand of basketball. I know that they struggled against Gonzaga this year. I think they lost all 3. Yeah, they lost all 3 to the Zags. But they did beat St. Mary's twice. They did beat McNeese, right? So that's 2 tournament teams. They lost to St. Louis by 1 point. So it's not like this is a team that's like far off from that 9 line where St. Louis fell. So I was a little surprised that Santa Clara didn't flip into the 9 line and St. Louis fall down to the 10 line, just because it didn't seem like the committee was super high on the A10 this year. Um, and obviously St. Louis lost to Dayton, not VCU, so they didn't even lose in the title game, which, I mean, granted, I think they still had a heck of a season. I think they fully deserve to be in this tournament, but I could have seen that flipping Santa Clara and St. Louis. But aside from that, I feel like it's fairly accurate. I was a little surprised to see NC State slip into first 4 territory. I thought they were going to be one of the last locked in 11 seeds rather than one of the play-in 11 seeds, but I mean, I can't really gripe about that. They didn't play great in the opportunities that they had against top competition, and they're just way too streaky of a team, I feel like, to reward them for the wins that they did have.
Yeah. Yeah. I do appreciate you bringing up the St. Louis team and their situation toward the end of the season. And I don't feel like enough people are talking about, like, because St. Louis was very highly rated. They were a top 25 team for a good portion of the season. And then they really fell off. They lose on the road to Rhode Island. They lose to a Dayton team that's not really what we're used to. Still some decent wins in there. Like they had the win against VCU, but really struggled toward the end of the season. And in an A10 that isn't really what we've seen of that conference in years past, them getting the 9 seed, I feel like, is very much just a, hey, this is how it's been, but next year probably wouldn't be like that. That being said, I think that Georgia St. Louis 8-9 game is a very interesting game to watch because even though St. Louis struggled down the stretch, they do have a lot of pieces. If you remember Indiana State's run, Robbie Avila, well, he's a Billiken now. And he's been the reason that the Billikens have been able to pull through some of the games in this tough stretch. Will Georgia be able to counter that, or will we have like March Madness in that first one? Because, yeah, I think it's very possible St. Louis could have fallen to a 10. I would even argue it's possible to an 11 just because of the form they were in. But nonetheless, they end at a 9, and it could be a very scary matchup for the Bulldogs. I like the
Sure.
Bulldogs in that personally. I think that they get it done. I wouldn't be shocked if St. Louis can flip the script, though, because there's some good ball players on that team. And I feel like a lot of people are counting them out because of the exact reasons I just brought up. Um, so mention an upset there. I kind of went into my central Cinderella watch, as in I didn't really have one. I really don't like men's or women's lower seeds this year.
Mm.
The closest one, as I mentioned before, was Notre Dame, just making it to the second weekend, but losing in the Sweet 16. Pat, do you have anyone that we're really going to be riding a wagon this year?
I actually do have one sleeper pick that I will put like a little asterisk next to it, and we'll say contingent upon tomorrow's results. I do think that SMU is kind of an intriguing team. So I know you and I talked about how I thought that they were going to beat Miami of Ohio off show or off
Yeah.
recording. But I also think in my bracket, again, contingent on them beating Miami, Ohio first. So we might need to redact this. But I actually have them in the Sweet 16. So I have them beating Tennessee, and then they played really, really close against Virginia at Virginia at the Scott Center earlier this year. I feel like they could kind of get over that hump on a neutral site. So a little bit bold, but every year there's always one team from the first four that wins at least one game and makes it into the round of 32. I'm hitching my wagon to the Mustangs for this year, and I'm also picking them to advance to the Sweet 16.
Wow, sweet second weekend team.
Second
Okay.
weekend team, yeah.
All right, so we're both kind of going a different route. I can't really say I feel as strongly about Miami, Ohio. I think they do get that one done in the first matchup, but I don't really feel as strongly as that. I think that it's going to be a pretty quick exit for the Redhawks after the first matchup against SMU. So that could be a very fun tale for the Mustangs, and almost in a way continue to highlight their move to the ACC, how much money that they've poured into athletics in the NIL era. I mean, they make the college football playoff last year. Definitely a setback this year, but they did beat a national championship participant this
Yeah.
year in Miami. So, I mean, the Mustangs football team still very good. Basketball clearly getting their act together with the money going into new conference, and they're playing better teams week in and week out. So I feel like that only can help them not only bring in more talent but have battle ready talent. Um, so now we're going to move into essentially our third weekend. Who are our final four teams for this tournament? We're going to go with the three that were not winning the national title, and then we'll bring the national champions up at the very end. So three of your first four final four teams, Pat.
Sure. So I don't know. My final fours, I don't want to say like super chalky, but a little chalky. So based on the three that I say, I feel like that'll probably, well, at least it'll give away the region that my national champion is coming from. So my three that I don't have winning the national championship are Duke, Houston, and Arizona. So 1, 2, 1.
Okay. Um, so we very much have some differences there. Um, so I have Illinois beating Houston.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um, I have Illinois making it as a 3 seed. I really like Arizona as well. They're in there obviously as the 1, and then I'm taking Iowa State as a 2 seed.
Okay.
I really like the Cyclones. I think that they've been playing really good ball at the end of the season. So I really like them to make the Final Four and kind of punctuate really what that basketball program has been doing the last couple of years. I I don't have them winning the Natty, unfortunately. But I mean, coming into this year, we've been like just talking about the Iowa State athletic department, men and women's basketball. Women's basketball definitely ended up hitting a sputter. They got super streaky. They'd win a lot, lose a lot, win a lot. Men's basketball, for the most part, the entire season really kept it together, especially at the end. So I think that they're going to get some flowers with the Final Four run. Women's side of thing, I don't think that there's any. There is one shock. One shock. So I have UCLA as a 1 seed. I have Louisville as a 3 seed. And my third team that's not winning the national championship in my bracket is 1 seed UConn.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I'm going to hand it to you before I keep going. I need to get rid of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, like, hey, got to hit him with that shock value and then let it sink in a little bit. I will say my picks for the Final Four are kind of also chalky for the women's side. I feel like the women's side is usually more chalk than the men's side turns out to be. Like, I feel like there's a bigger gap between higher end women's programs than, like a good mid major versus like an okay SEC team for the men. But I have in my bracket for the women, I've got Michigan, I've got UCLA, and I've got South Carolina. So I think that kind of gives away who my national champion is on the women's side.
Yes, as it did mine. I think that UConn team is so good, and I can easily see them winning a national title. However, there's an ounce of me that thinks South Carolina can win that game, and I think that if you do get through that team, you're winning it. So I have to go with the Gamecocks. I'm going with that little sliver of hope. If not, though, I must say, UConn's had a lot of great teams in their history. This would be another undefeated team and one that goes on the Mount Rushmore of, is this one of the best teams of all time? It's definitely in the question. It's just crazy considering you lose a player like Paige Beckers to the draft last year, and then you reload and you're even better. So big shout out to UConn. I can see that going either way. I think it's between South Carolina and UConn. That Final Four game will be essentially the first national championship. I really like that much, but I can't go against the Gamecocks here. I'll go ahead and take it over to the men's side before passing it back to you. So, as I mentioned, I'm going 3-2-1 Illinois, Iowa State, Arizona, and then 1 Duke. I've been high on Duke all year on the men's side. If you look at the Pac-South standings, they are just running away with it. They win 1 game, and if they lose in the round of 32 and Florida wins the national championship, that's the only way for Duke not to win the championship. No other team that's still alive in March can win the conference. Duke has to lose immediately, and Florida has to win everything to lose. If Duke makes the Sweet 16, it doesn't matter what Florida does. Like, that team in our conference standings stands head and shoulders above everyone else. Yes, there are some big teams in the tournament that obviously don't fill in those gaps, so things could be different. But I feel like that is just, in a way, a microcosm to what the full picture is of just how good this Duke team is. This doesn't feel like, he says in italics, the Duke team that loses randomly in the round of 32, or they get one of those Cinderella teams in Sweet 16 and they lose to that one. This doesn't feel like that team. And once again, you go to that UConn team on the women's side. You lose one of your best players, you reload and you're better. Well, Duke, they lost borderline everyone. Yeah. Reload, and I think that they're better. So I like Duke on the men's side, South Carolina on the women's side. So not a lot of fun for me. I'm picking 2 1 seeds. But if you're one of the best, you have to expect to be the best. That's how I look at it. Pat, are you What are your final thoughts?
So for my national champion on the men's side, the reason I did not pick Duke, I do have them in my final four, but the injury to Caleb Foster does worry me a little bit. It seems like that is a season ender for him at the point guard position. Obviously, Patton Dogba was a little banged up, didn't play most of the games. I don't even know if he played against Virginia. Most of, if not all of the games in the ACC tournament. And you kind of saw Duke have to grind those games out a little bit more than some of their other matchups. Yes, they are battle tested. Yes, they are battle, let's say, proven. But those injuries do kind of raise a flag for me where it's like, is this the same Duke team without Caleb Foster? Or if Pat and Dogba can't play, is it the same team without him? Like you can't expect Cam Boozer to just do everything against
Sure.
really high level teams. So I am going with the team that I feel like was the best team in basketball most of the year. I've actually been going back and forth on this one pretty much since the brackets released on Sunday. Uh, for me, it's the semifinal matchup between Arizona and Michigan that determines the national champion. Since I already listed Arizona, you guys can probably guess. I am going with Michigan to bring it home. The Maize and Yellow winning the Natty. And I just feel like this is a really deep Michigan team. I feel like they're not really prone to those peaks and valleys that have set back other high level squads to this point. But I don't know, man. Like there's something about Arizona that makes me want to pick them. But every time I've picked Arizona in the history of this tournament, they've done something to screw it up, and it's made me bitter against the Wildcats. So for that reason and that reason only, I'm picking Michigan. I think both you and I picked Florida last year, right? So I think both of us got the national championship right on the men's side.
I think we did. Yeah. Which shocking.
Yeah,
I mean, that Florida team was great last year.
they were very good.
But for both people to go with a national championship in this tournament, just crazy. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, there's a lot of teams that can still win it. I'm going to put this point out there before we kind of wrap things up here. North Carolina's losing round one. They're doing it. They're losing. VCU is going to get the upset. That's one of my truths that I need to put out on the show.
I do share that opinion as well. We are pro VCU over here. Those are my two 11 seeds that I've got winning, VCU and SMU.
Yeah, I just don't. I don't like UNC now, especially with the injuries. And I think that that's a very solid VCU team. That being said, I think that they do run into a buzzsaw in Illinois the very next round, but it'll be a fun 2 days for the Rams.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I don't really have much else. I guess one other questionable pick you could say I have. I think Missouri beats Miami. Something of note that some people
it's pretty much
may not have on their radar. Yeah, it's basically a home game. That game's being played at Enterprise in St. Louis, which that Missouri team is already used to playing games in that same stadium. It's like an hour and a half down the road from Como. That's kind of the deciding factor. There's not enough on either side that really give me much, but the fact that it's a home game.
So do you like Missouri to beat Purdue as well, or do you have Purdue going to your Sweet 16?
No, I think Missouri stays in town. Okay. I like Purdue to at least get to the Sweet 16. That's where they run into Gonzaga, and I must say I don't really love this Gonzaga team, but I also don't love that Purdue team. I think that their pixie dust is going to kind of run out in the Sweet 16 against the Zags, and then of course the very next game, that's where you run into Arizona, and we're both very high to a point on Arizona. They're just such a good team. Like they're so sound, but in a way, it's kind of like they're just missing that like spark. They're so good, so around it, but they don't have that thing to me.
You know what? I'm gonna put my hand up here. I'm changing it right now. I am shifting that winner of that game from Michigan to Arizona. So I'm riding with the Cats. They've hurt me before. They're gonna hurt me again in this position. So better the one that you know than the one that you don't know, I guess. So I'll set myself up for some pain, and I'll shift Arizona to my national champion.
I mean, I do have the Cats losing in the national title game to Duke. I mean, I'll go straight score prediction. I think it's a 77-70 game. That's just kind of what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
We are still a month or so away from that game, so a lot can happen. A lot can happen. But, I mean, as I said, like, that Arizona team is so good. They proved it in so many of their high-caliber matchups throughout the season. I just think that they're missing that one piece to literally win the national championship game. And I think that Duke does have that this year. Yes, it's basic. It's kind of the easy pick to say that you're going to have 2 1 seeds, and Duke is the one that's going to win it. But when we come back here in a couple weeks, and that's the matchup. All right, that's it for this episode. We're about to watch some basketball. Thank you all again so much for tuning in, watching, listening, wherever you're enjoying our little show that we have going on. We'll be back to discuss where everything went wrong next week. For Pat, I am TJ. Thank you all so much.